know if it's a happy ending or a happy middle. You guys can sort of determine at the end of it if that's true, but
Yeah.
to be here.
Yeah. When I read the subject, I was like, well, it's not the ending. She's just getting started. We're catching you at this moment. As you shared, as I wrote in the email, like you're living now in Newcastle, England. You're Canadian. You were living in New York City when we first met. You had a stint in Greece on the way to England. We're going to hear all about this. And you are now pursuing your dual passions of comedy and fighting the patriarchy and raising your son and living your life where you don't need to wear much makeup.
No.
Which is great.
The blurring effect does everything, really.
Let's just start when we had our first conversation and described like you were crying in the lobby of your big law firm, and start with like where you were in your career at that point.
I was a 6 years litigation associate. I had just over the Christmas holidays, it was January 2020 when we spoke, and I just over the Christmas holidays really hit a low point psychologically. I remember I was on my way to England to be with my then boyfriend's family for Christmas, and I just remember like almost having a nervous breakdown on the A train to the airport, and just because I had made some mistake at work and I was so nervous about it. I was just so worried, and it felt like I had hit a breaking point, and it was just like something has to change. So I found you and I called you. That was at that point.
And then the pandemic hit, right? Because that was right. That was January. And then just a few short months later. Tell us about your will journey. And a big part of that was we all went into lockdown then.
Yeah. So, initially, I think this happens to a lot of will participants. It was sort of like, how am I going to make time for this? I barely have time for anything. Like, she wants us on at like middle of the day. Like, what? Never gonna do that. And it's like, or I'll manage to like lock my door, not be on camera. You don't lock your door. That wasn't the thing that you did, but we had one. So I was like, okay, I'll lock my door. I'll not be on camera. If someone comes in, I'll quickly shut it and run away. And then of course, the pandemic happened. I was in Vermont. I know there's like been a lot of places been thrown about, so follow me as we head to all these places. I was in Vermont, and it was like, okay, suddenly I could have the camera on. I could be there and actually fully participate. So that was really, I think, a big impetus.
Yeah.
But it was also that I was just reflecting today, actually, because I went away from my son for the first time. He's 22 months old, and went away for the night with my husband for the first time for a night without him. I was just thinking about the sort of big shift that parenthood is in someone's life, and how, in a way, the pandemic really kind of smoothed the way, because that was really the first time that I was able to kind of conceptualize that life as I know it is so fragile, right? Could just completely change at the drop of a hat. I mean, we all experienced it, right? Where it was sort of like, we don't do the things we normally do. The things we normally do are bad, right? Bad. I mean,
what do you mean? I'm not totally tracking with you.
I mean, even just taking the subway to work, we had to just, or, being with people, or, we had to kind of completely reorient our life. And we did. I mean, we've come back in a lot of ways from some of those strictures, of course.
Yeah.
But we were able to do that in that period. We were able to, obviously with a lot of difficulty, but we were able to modify our lives. And I think with the impetus of that change, of sort of being in Vermont and stepping up my will participation, I was able to kind of think about all the stuff I wanted to do. And then I got fired.
All right. So you were in Vermont, you were able to get on will calls. You were like in the process of trying to like discover what else you could do. And comedy did come up in that. There's some other things but comedy was like on the list. I remember you were in Vermont, you were working on this big brief, and then you got fired. So tell us about what happened then.
I had the cue cards of sort of all the things I had thought about, what I wanted to do. And I was really sort of thinking about it. Yeah, then I got fired. And then it was a little bit like, I remember having some calls with some former colleagues who were like, oh, you come work here at a different ex-law firm. And I just like could not stomach it. Just couldn't do it. And my husband at the time, he's English, and he was like, let's move to Greece. Brexit is coming. We go there and we can get residency. And at first I was like, I have a job. But then when I didn't have a job, I was like, I don't have a job. So I guess we can do that. And we got married in 6 weeks and moved to Greece in 3 months.
So that freed you. So losing the job freed you, but it was a shock at the time. How do you look now at getting fired?
I should say, by the way, it wasn't a clean break, right? So I got fired, but then I continued working as a contract worker there. I feel in a way grateful for the firing. I feel that it was a push I needed. It was a universe kind of talking to me. But I felt too that in a way I was best positioned to take advantage of it. I had done the the will work, right? And had seen people do things like take breaks and, it
Yeah.
not being the end of the world. It felt like doable.
How did being part of Will during that time really help you?
Well, I think it just felt like, well, first of all, I think it unearthed, I mean, the comedy thing to me is like so obvious in a way. It was something I'd been doing since college. It just unearthed that that was like really what I wanted to do, and not in a way that felt like, oh, but you can't do it. Not in a way that felt like, okay, well, these were actually what you had to do. You had to be on Harvard's figgy pudding, and then you had to go live in Chicago and then do this. And that's the only way you're going to do it. And you're never going to do it otherwise. It was sort of like, no, I just want to do it. I think I had listened to actually like sort of podcasts like this in
Yeah.
my will materials. I listened to another sort of, lawyer turned comedian. And I just felt like I could do it. I don't know. There was a little bit of I think also, just there was momentum there, I think, from stuff.
And there was belief. There was like, of course you can. There was sort of like you were in a community of like, you want to go to business school, you want to be a comedian, you want to start an astrology business. Like, I'm sort of this like, if it's coming to you, it wants to come through you.
Yeah.
So you were in a community where we were all like, hell yes, you can.
Yeah. Yes, definitely had that, definitely.
And how did that impact you being in that milieu?
No, hugely. I mean, hugely. It was like, it felt more expansive, really.
I love that word. It's like my favorite word right now. I'm just like, do I feel contracted or expansive? Contracted or expansive? So good. All right. So you went to Greece. Tell us a little bit about Greece and what happened then. Because, you're job free at that time. We're kid free.
Contract job kind of in hand, right? It was a weird time at first. I mean, it was really severely locked down. It felt like I could be anywhere in the sort of like very small ambit of my tiny apartment. I did the artist's way.
You continued in a mastermind too.
Yeah. And I was sort of trying my hand at I found an English speaking comedy night, started doing some comedy there. It was pretty infrequent, but it was fun, made vision boards. That was sort of the first year there. I got pregnant, had a miscarriage. Mm-hmm. I got pregnant. And I should say also, before I left to Greece, my grandmother passed away. And I think that was also a little bit of that was a big turning point of like, you don't need to be as close by anymore. I think that was sort of part of my wanting to stay, and part of also what kind of freed me to go. Then I got pregnant again, and Greece started to feel a little bit, I mean, we traveled a lot. It was under severe lockdown, but we did manage to get out. The first summer was amazing. And then we started to think about what our next step was. I got a different contract job, one that was not legal. It was more legal adjacent, legal education. And so I really kind of freed myself from my law firm in the second year that I was there. But with the pregnancy, we were sort of like, okay, we do kind of want to leave, and we were exploring different things. And my husband got this job at Durham University in Durham, England. And if you talk to me, which Lindsay did, this was the worst news of my life. This was a great job for him. He could not pass this up. But when I think of Durham, England, and you guys can Google it, I think of I do not want to be the first Jew to ever step foot in this fucking place. There's not going to be a single spicy food. It's the worst. And I had been there only once, a really beautiful university. And actually, it was part of this trip that I went with a few friends. And one of them went to university, did her undergrad at Durham, and she was from India. And she was like, there's this amazing Indian restaurant just 30 minutes away on the train in Newcastle. So I had lunch in Newcastle. So I had only had lunch in Newcastle. That was my experience of the place, lunch. Lunch was good, by the way.
Okay, well, it must have been pretty memorable if, and there was spicy food.
So I said to Raf, my husband, I was like, fine, we have to go. This was literally someone died. That's how horrible this news was for me. I was like, fine, we'll go. Because I knew, I was like, this is good for the kid. This is good for you. I don't really have much going on. So fine. And we want to go somewhere that we feel makes sense for a next step. And this does for a lot of us. But I was like, we have to live in Newcastle because I just cannot deal. There needs to be non-white people. There needs to be, that's all. And the city is going to provide that.
Okay. So before you move, let me just so in Greece, you started doing some comedy and you did The Artist's Way, which is this book by Julia Cameron that I'm holding up. It's been around for over 25 years, The Spiritual Path to Higher Creativity. And so you were what was happening for you in terms of comedy when you were still in Greece before you moved?
So I was doing these nights in Greece. There was one comedy club in New York that was doing like Zoom. I was doing that too. That was really fun. Just experimenting. I took sketch classes too online. A lot of stuff online that I was doing that felt like really fun and preparatory. The community in Greece was really nice. And this girl who ran the night, I told her I was moving to Newcastle.
Yeah.
And she was like, I know a comedian there. You have to talk to him. And so I talked to him and he was like, okay, this is what you do. And he told me like exactly who to email, exactly what to do. And it turns out, so I moved to Newcastle.
One of the parts of Will is having these informational conversations. And it's what you were doing was like, you weren't like, oh, I'm doing the will process, but like it was, you were like, you tell someone, you say, who do you know who lives in Newcastle, England? Do you know anyone? You make these connections and things evolve organically. It's both intentional and organic.
Yeah, and I think too, to be honest, part of where Will ties in here, right? Before there was the big law ladder. There was like what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to do this, you're supposed to do that, you're supposed to do that. And then I think with Will, it was sort of like the idea that you kind of just have to like go with it. Yeah. It's a little bit of a like, you can't fight it. You just have to go with it. And but there was also the sense that nothing is permanent, that like, if this is really bad, we'll leave. Like, it doesn't have to be, this is your life. And so sorry.
And I think losing the job, losing your grandmother, in some ways, those things freed you. And you're like, okay, I'm going to go with this. You're off that lockstep process and you just have to go with it.
You have to go with that.
Just note one other thing here, which is that process of like leaving a job. Often that's very common is when you're sort of transitioning into something else. There's often like, okay, maybe you leave the job, still doing some contract work or consulting for them. That was a slow sort of decline out of your firm too. It's not, yes, the firing was sudden, but the relationship with them trickled out over time. You've landed in Newcastle where there's spicy food and not just white people.
Say that, by the way, that Greece, I wasn't working that much. I wasn't like, everything's great. There was like a lot of down. And I think a lot of also the realization was that psychiatric drugs are great, really, really good. High recommend. And when I was off them, either pregnant, trying to get pregnant, breastfeeding, blah, 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 that was very hard. That was very, very difficult. So huge plug for them too.
And a lot of support for one's mental health inside of Will, right? It's like not something that we ignore.
No,
I mean, it's not a place to get treatment, but it's a place to like be real what's going on for you.
I get to Newcastle. There's like a lot of hubbub about finding a place. We find a place. I push a little hard because apparently they find some damp in the apartment. And I'm like, damp is like what they really cutely call mold in this country. Fucking way I'm living in a country. There's a lot of pressure from my in-laws that are sort of like, aren't you being, a little sort of North American about this? And I'm just like, no, I'm not putting my child in a fucking moldy house. Like, what do you want? Then I find that place fell through. And then I find the most amazing place to live. So we have like just a super beautiful house right in Subway. And the walk there, like I'm alone to look at this house and it's just the most beautiful day. And I just have like this, I like happen to upon this most amazing covered market, have a great cup of coffee. I'm like just so enamored with this place. There's a dryer. They don't even have dryers in this country. So it's like great. And we have these like friends of friends who are just being so wonderful. They happen to like look at some apartments for us, like just people don't know, just stepping in. So it's like, okay, this is going to be okay. And then I do what this Greek comedian told me to do, which was contact those people. And it turns out that in Newcastle, there is this comedy collective that's literally a cooperative that's designed to help comedians starting out.
Oh my God. I just got chills. Like you couldn't plan this.
They have these open sort of new materials, new act nights, and they're super welcoming. I've just like, it's been a year now of performing with them. And I've like been on some nights with some professionals. They have that cooperative and they have their major comedy club that also has places in Edinburgh and Glasgow that also has sort of a like up and comer kind of helping to, I started off doing a 5 and then I've done a 10 and then I'm going to be on a weekend bill. And then, it's sort of like to build you up and give you feedback. And it's been really good.
It's amazing. What's like your mindset around this? And has Will helped you in any way with your mindset around going for something new like this, where you're so really stretching yourself and putting yourself out there?
I think it's also just the ability to kind of observe, like sometimes to sort of step back. I had 2 gigs last week and one of them went really, really well. And one of them is like, oh God, I really just bombed. It was so bad. Because I was trying to like try some new material. It was like, this is really bad. But then it was like, why am I focused on the bad night? Why does my brain go there?
Yeah.
And sort of being able to understand that about myself, I think was, Will definitely helped me with that.
That's beautiful. All right. So you've got this comedy thing, like growing and grooving, and tell us about the lawyering you're doing. And like, I would say also just, the shift in your relationship with your legal work.
Yeah.
I'd be curious about that.
Initially, when I was still in Greece and we knew we were moving, it was like a kind of a really long buildup, and slightly unfortunately due to this visa situation. Immediately, I'm sort of like, oh, I'm New York barred. I don't want to become qualified in the UK. So I need to sort of shift my thinking in what I'm going to do. And I really had sort of thought about this sort of book to film world and how that would be able to use my legal skills, would also just have an English degree. I would just thought that would really, I did the process with my husband, whose book, Midnight in Cairo, feel free to purchase, everybody listening. His book got optioned and I helped him with that. I felt, frankly, that his UK negotiators were not just up to par, really.
Okay, good. That
So
he
I was
had
like,
you on his team. Yeah.
yeah. So I was like, I could really do this. And I did some reaching out, sort of, like we've done in Will. I had some great conversations. And when I got to England, I sort of hit the ground running. I had a lot of interviews, conversations, and I was working at first for a literary scout, reading books and writing reports. And that was like super fun. I just enjoyed doing that. And that's how things got started. But I was still looking for something more permanent. It was midnight and I literally had just run down the stairs to my computer because I had a joke and I wanted to write it out. And LinkedIn was open and I saw an advertisement looking for a US trained lawyer in the UK at kind of a feminist law firm. And the job ad basically looked straight out of like an ad that I would have responded to a few years earlier. I think back when I was more in the mindset of staying in the law. It just felt too eerie. It just felt so strange, but I was so divided about applying. I just had so turned away from the law. And actually I said no. After I interviewed with them, I said no to it. And they came back and they were like, we'll take anything. And I was like,
oh, you want me that bad?
Which is like never also, I mean, such a switch from my old life where it was like, you should be grateful you have a job, kind of.
That's right. You should be grateful you're in this very prestigious, important place. Did you write the joke down first and then look more at the LinkedIn?
I did. But otherwise, I wouldn't have seen it, I don't think, because I definitely wasn't searching for it.
Wow. I have chills. It's my Will peeps here will know that means like it's a synchronicity. There's some divine intervention, you're on the path of something, and it's one of the things that you start to tune into when doing the artist's way, which I do with another group of ongoing Will members, like through the creator circle, of really tuning into those synchronicities and being open to them.
Frankly, saying no felt right. But then it was like, okay, what can I construct for myself that made sense? And at first it was 10 to 15 hours. They're based outside of London, like really to the west of London. And at first I thought, I would fly there every week, stay and then I was just like, I can't do that. I can't do that. I just can't be away from my kid.
So you said no, and they came back and they were like, we'll take anything. And so you're like, so what did you come up with?
10 to 15 hours, full remote. Yeah. And it's now up. It's up to 20 to 30, but completely on my own volition. And what I think I didn't realize, because I didn't interview with the person I work with most now, is that actually what the job is that I, in 3 syllables, I sue cults. And cults are, my mother, from a very young age, ingrained in me so hard she was fascinated by cults, but just ingrained in me so hard not to be in a cult, and really representing the survivors of sexual assaults within spiritual communities and cults has been so fun. And frankly, that's not how the job was sold to me. Maybe it was, but I hadn't met the person I work with most, her and I work so well together. And it's just it's been a really wild, it's actually literally been a year today, maybe yesterday.
Oh my God, that's an amazing synchronicity too.
For those who follow, there's been kind of these windows of opening the statute of limitations. So I've been filing a bunch of lawsuits on behalf of old women who've lived with this for.
Oh my God. Oh, I have chills. I have chills again. Oh, Pamela, that's so beautiful. That is
really
so
fun.
amazing. I mean, I knew you were looking for the literary thing. I knew you were like on that path, but I didn't know how you had really kind of decided to not look in legal. And you had really like let that go. You were still barred in New York. You weren't changing that. But wow, I mean, it's just amazing. And so you're getting to do this work and do your comedy and be with your son.
Well, I'm just going to say on that topic, like, I think in a lot of my sort of informational meetings, a lot of people are like, you should really sell yourself in the business affairs world and then, move kind of towards the book to film, the literary stuff. That sounds like definitely not what I want to do. Like, I do not want to read contracts. Like, I don't want to do that. I was a litigator. I chose litigation for a reason.
All right. So if you are listening to this and you wonder what happened in that conversation, I remember when I was having that conversation with Pamela, I got kicked out of Zoom and then I thought we recorded the rest of the conversation, but we didn't. So in preparing for this podcast episode, I saw what happened and I immediately flashed on the first episode of Julia Louis-Dreyfus's podcast, Wiser Than Me, where she's interviewing Jane Fonda and they have an epic tech fail. And Julia shares all the behind the scenes stuff about it. And so I thought, well, if they can do it, Pamela and I can too. So welcome back. It's quite a few months later, but Pamela and I both teed this up and you were talking about like other people had told you to go into like business affairs or something.
Yes.
So what do you remember from that?
That there was kind of, I think the idea was that I would have to do more things that I didn't want to do to eventually do the thing that I did want to do. The idea of the thing I didn't want to do, which is business affairs and looking at contracts, which really wasn't me. I just couldn't stomach it. I couldn't do it. Saying no to that, I think I didn't have, not necessarily had an offer, but I think that it was hard for me to think about going down that route.
I just think that's really powerful when you're like, other people are giving me this advice, like, you should do this, you should do this. And you were so clear. You're like, no, that's not me. And I'm not going to spend my time doing something I don't want to do to maybe hopefully get to where I do want to do. In reviewing this podcast also and re-listening to it, like the fact that you were like running downstairs at midnight to write a joke down and the synchronicity then of you happening to see this job opportunity on LinkedIn, it just reminded me of that phrase, like, we create our own luck. You were so clear. You're like, no, I've said no to law for now. And I'm doing comedy and I'll find this other job in a way that feels good. You created your own luck by following yourself.
Yes. And like sort of just deciding to put one foot in front of the other. Not kind of trying to be so planny of like, I will do business affairs for 3 to 5 years and then I could, parlay into XYZ. And it's like, I'd climbed the ladder to big law. I'd climbed that ladder. I'd done all the right things. I didn't want to do it that way anymore. It didn't lead me to what I wanted ultimately.
Beautiful. So take us to where you are now and what a day in your life, because you are, I think, doing what you ultimately wanted. And so take us into like your life now.
Get up with the toddler, get up with the child, have like 2 hours of sort of play and breakfast before kind of either the nanny comes or I drop him off at nursery. Then I go to Pilates, which, frankly, my mother told me was a sin to give your child to someone else and then pay attention to yourself. God forbid you do that. But I do that often because I paid for it. And then come home, maybe have a coffee, maybe do a little groceries, sort of get to work about 11 and work until about 4:35, kind of depending on the day. Be with my son until bedtime. And then the evening, really, either I'm going to do a show. Sometimes I do calls in the evening. That's part of, I think, working kind of transatlantically and sort of having the mornings is sometimes it's, my clients are on the West Coast or of the US or New York, and I'm happy to kind of do that. It's never a chore for me because it really is usually a client call. I have the best clients. They make me honored to do my job. It's never sort of a chore. Or honestly, I'm just kind of on the couch, chilling, I don't know, doing the bookkeeping, doing the shopping or watching television, chilling out, which I also feel quite happy to be doing. Honestly, this comes back to the Strengths Finder. It was always so eerily accurate. I always found it eerily accurate. I find socializing easy, but I don't always love it. That's what they said in there. And I think that's so true. And I'm actually thinking that I'm in the place now where it's okay. Like my social life is in comedy. I have a lot of like sort of really nice friends in there. And that's kind of it. You know, in the daytime, maybe I hang out with, you know, on a weekend, I hang out with some people who have kids, but it's just not my time to kind of be the social butterfly. And that's okay.
Yeah. And you're getting fed that way through your comedy peers. And, you know, also in re-listening to the recording, it's like this one phone call with a Greek comedian, like just opened a huge amount of opportunities and connections for you. Yeah. So you've got your Pilates mornings, right? And starting, I mean, this must, like, if you look back to like, I'm going to cry a little bit, like, seriously, like the Pamela who was breaking down on the A train, right? And like when we first spoke, you were in tears. Could you imagine that like you have this life where you get to just like hang out with your toddler for 2 hours and like drop him off and go to Pilates and do the grocery shopping and like come home and like do legal work that's incredibly meaningful and fulfilling? Like what does this stir up in you?
I mean, it's astonishing. I think there's so many ways that I couldn't have planned it. You know, I couldn't have thought, sort of even dreamed of this kind of combination of things, to be honest. You know, the focus is so narrow and, you know, they always tell you, if you want to live internationally, you can never be a litigator if you live internationally. Never. You know, that's always the kind of litany. And here I am doing that. It's kind of a little bit of a matter of letting go a little bit.
You said that. And not trying to plan, but going one step at a time. And I think really identifying, like you said, leaning into those strengths, like really getting to know yourself and what you want and trusting that. Like, no, I don't want to do this thing that might lead me to this other thing. Like, I can't stomach it. I loved when you said that. Thank you.
And also, you know, my work, my boss also had a non-linear life. Like she went to law school at 40. To have both her and I lead this team, a lot of young people there, to be able to say, like, you could have a nonlinear life and it's okay. And even you could just kind of see where the road takes you. We also have a wonderful investigator on our team who I just love. And she also, you know, she started out as a scientist. You know, she's a wonderful person too. I love my colleague. I love my job so much. And I just feel like the amount of joy I get from it and to do it on my schedule and to do it, you know, alongside comedy and alongside being a mother and also just not killing myself. This time last year, we were very busy. At that point, it was like, okay, I'm buckling down. I'm going to do a lot of work.
Right. Because of the statute of limitations and the number of people who were filing suits. Yeah.
It's not always going to be like that. It's been so both fascinating and fulfilling.
So what would you tell a woman lawyer who's like breaking down and crying and listening to your story and being like, I don't believe that could ever be possible for me?
Okay, I think number one, think outside the box on location. I live in Newcastle. No one wants to live in Newcastle.
Newcastle, England. Let's just in case there's one.
You're right. There is in Australia, in fact, which I think is actually very nice. People think of Newcastle, England. Maybe they think of like the beer. They think of like the coal mines. They're like, no. I think you have to kind of be able to see outside New York, the mortgage in a big city that's kind of holding you back. Because if that's really what's kind of getting you, it would free you up financially and perhaps mentally.
So what if someone's really struggling to look outside that? I mean, the lockstep process and the golden handcuffs feel so real.
I think taking a leap is worth it.
So one of the things I've been saying to people about this podcast is that, you know, we're having conversations about what the reality of life and the experience for women lawyers, often in big firms, that are not being had anywhere else. And what would you say is like something that you gleaned either from being in Will or some of the conversations we've had that you feel like is like a pulling back of the curtain on the reality that you experienced and you witnessed?
I think it's the idea of like, that we are trained to please, that we are trained to be the good girl, that we are trained to always be responsible. And I think that that's a load of horseshit. And also the real thing, you know, it's like the reason that big law persisted, right, is sort of like the hazing and everyone does this and then the older associates tell you that they did this, so you're going to have to do this. I think that's also just like, you could be kind at work. You could be kind to your junior associates, you be kind to your, you know, paralegals, and that could be a workplace based on that kind of respect.
All right. Well, I want to thank you for getting back on a call and finishing this episode. If you're still listening, thank you for listening. Where could people find you and follow your comedy career?
It's at PT_lols, LOLZ, or Z, depending on where you're listening. if anyone wants to get in touch with Lena, get my email, please do. And I'm happy to speak with anyone.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And we'll put that in the show notes too. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
There's sort of no time like the present. We only live one life. We gotta enjoy it. And if you're not enjoying it, its fear takes such hold of people, and it's just so much of it is fear itself, not anything else.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. I like to say where there's a will, there's a way. And thank you for sharing your way with us.
Thank you.